Selwyn here for winstrength.com, bringing you the 7th week of the Average to Savage 2.0 training program written by Greg Nuckols over at Stronger by Science. Like usual, I'll leave links below for the program as well as the Stronger by Science website. Highly recommend checking both resources out. I rely on the Stronger by Science website quite heavily. So wrapping up week 7. Week 7 is a deload week, so that's kind of awesome. We just shifted down both volume and intensity, but still pushing relatively heavy weights. So we're right around that 50 to 60% of my 1 rep max, but we're doing a lot more volume with that. And that's something that I think I missed in the past, was when I saw deload week, I generally backed off the gas like a lot. So instead of doing, say, 50 to 60% of my 1 rep maxes, I'd be doing maybe like 20 to 30% for like maybe way less volume as well. So I like that the way they've set this up. I'm kind of learning a different way to approach a deload week, because again, even after this deload week, I'm not that beat up. I feel refreshed. The workouts didn't feel that strenuous, like in the big picture of things, which probably means I was able to recover a little bit, but without losing too much of that strength, while still stimulating, while still creating some good stimulus and slightly a lot less stress than I would have normally in the previous weeks. So that's one thing I definitely wanted to talk about today, was when should you include a deload week? I think it comes down to personal preference, but I definitely think it changes over the years. A couple years ago, I was finding every 4 weeks was a good deloads schedule, but as I progressed further, I'm noticing that I'm able to expand out between deloads. So now it was a 7th week and it's feeling kind of nice. So after 6 weeks deload, another 6 weeks going to be deload. And I think that's going to change. So you constantly have to reassess when the deload's happening. But a couple of signals that I find personally that help me identify when the deload should fit in is, first off, you're not feeling like training. This isn't like a one-off thing where it's like, I don't feel like training today, but for the whole week, if you don't feel mentally excited to go into the gym, that might be a sign that that following week you should perform some sort of deload week. Another one is that there's like excessive soreness in the body. So if you kind of, as you build up in the training program, you kind of hopefully accumulating some stress because you're progressively pushing yourself harder and harder as the weeks go on. You're kind of stacking up and building. There comes a point where you're building too much and you're like overreaching. So your body needs a break, and you need to listen to the body and figure out what's excessive soreness is that, if that's the case. And that's something you're going to learn about over the years of training. I felt that a lot sooner. Now I'm feeling that a lot later in the training cycle. So from every 4 weeks to every 5 weeks, now we're kind of doing every 6 weeks, and that kind of progresses and changes as the body goes, as you have other things in your life happening as well. And those are kind of the two signals that I kind of look at, just the mental side and the physical side of things. And when it's not just a one-day thing, but when it's a trend over that week, that's probably when you should look at putting in a deload the following week. And the one thing I did want to mention with a deload week is I think it's a great time to, because you're not pushing weights, you're not pushing yourself that physically, I think it's a great time to work on your technical and mental side of the working out. So because we're using sub-maximal weights, so we're obviously sticking within the 60% range, I think it's a great time to really focus in and hone in on improving your technique, especially since we do have a lot more reps to work on. Something I like to do is pick a cue for each set or for each day, and then focus on that technical cue in order to improve that little function of my lift that might be lagging, or something that I've noticed in the upcoming weeks that hasn't been really executing that well. For example, for the deadlift, I was cueing my glutes to flex right as the bar passes the knees, just to get that explosive finish off for the deadlift, something I don't think I was doing that well in the preceding weeks. So again, hopefully this kind of refreshes that and sets some new mental cues and some new technical aspects, because we're always constantly trying to refine that technical execution of all the lifts, because there's no such thing as a perfect squat, because you can always be better. So always look at this time, because we're not focusing on pushing heavy weights, let's look at performing better lifts from a technical point of view. So with that in mind, what I'll do is I'll flick over to some voiceovers and some training footage. So what you notice this week is there's no lifting belts, knee wraps, wrist wraps, any other supportive type gear that I'm using, and that's just because it is a deload week, so we're playing in that, again, under 60% of our 1 rep max range, so it's not really that necessary. For the regular squats, I did switch over back to some flat soled shoes, no lift here in the squats, and again, just trying to get a little bit of different stimulus here, focusing on the technique rather than trying to lift as much weight as possible, really trying to focus on keeping that core solid, keeping everything stable there. Here we have some 45-degree, roughly, incline bench pressing. Again, something I'll look at in the future with the next block is removing flat bench pressing altogether, potentially, just because with this new increase in incline, I'm seeing a lot less shoulder pain experience, and I think that's just going to be how I'm going to train in the future, just because I am not really entering any powerlifting competitions. And here we did just go straight into the sumo deadlifts. I supersetted these 2 movements. One thing I tried to do for the deload week was to decrease those rest times, just to drive a little bit more stress in the cardiovascular region, just to get a bit more GPP exposure. Since those weights are quite light, we're able to shorten down a lot of the workout sessions, which is kind of nice break. So we're decreasing workload as well, just by not being exposed to as much stress over the long period of time. Here we have some barbell rows, just floating barbell rows. You'll notice I'm trying to keep that back as stable as possible. Again, just focusing on that technique. I like to use the deload weeks to focus on that mind-muscle connection, which does help me in subsequent weeks, just with those slight technical cues that I like to focus on, hopefully ingraining themselves over the course of the week. We're doing relatively high reps here. That way we have a chance to practice those technical cues. And with the weight being light, you're kind of able to think through each rep and assess your way the body's moving between each and every rep there, so you can really have a live feedback system, as long as you're kind of conscious of that and paying attention to how your body's moving and trying to implement those changes in that next rep. So that'll wrap up week 7. Again, cool little deload week, nothing special, but again, I think it's pretty necessary, especially if you're pushing yourself for the preceding weeks. Be sure to check out next week and subscribe to the channel. Greg has released some updates for the program. Again, this is why I highly recommend getting it, because now he's just giving more stuff away for something that you bought once. You doesn't have to do that. A lot of the times with these programs, you'll have to pay for updates. Greg has released new templates that are obviously based on the same structure, but there's new little tweaks depending on your goals. Because I have been wanting to shift more towards hypertrophy, there is a hypertrophy focused template that is part of the new program, the new package of Average to Savage. I'm going against my own advice and changing programs halfway, a third of the way through. In my defense, it is the same program, just a different version of it. So I'm going to let myself slide on that one, really, because I am excited to kind of shift up the training a little bit more. We did finish one block of training, so we got that 6-week and 1-week deload. So we're going to reset again in week 8, but it'll be week 1 of the new hypertrophy focused Average to Savage training program. So make sure to tune in next week. Check that out. This has been Selwyn from Wynn Strength, and remember, a better life through strength.